Welcome to Ask AI, the podcast that brings you insightful interviews and news from the world of Canadian artificial intelligence. This episode is sponsored by Microsoft Canada. Microsoft is committed to building trusted and responsible AI systems. To learn more, go to microsoft.com/AI and check out their free AI business school to start building intelligence into your solutions today. We're also sponsored by Cinchi, the global leader in data fabric technology. Visit Cinchi.com to learn how to eliminate integration and turbocharge your AI transformation.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jaxson Khan, and today I'll be your host of another episode of the Ask AI podcast. We've been so excited recently to profile so many great folks in the AI sector, especially in the Canadian context. Today, I'm really excited to have another fantastic guest on board. His name is Mark Speaker, and he is the Industry Solutions Executive for Microsoft Canada, which covers actually a portfolio comprising utilities, oil and gas, forestry, pulp and paper, mining, and discrete manufacturing. Mark brings over 20 years of experience in the industrial space, working with industry leaders in both technology and business to advance their thinking around emerging technologies and innovative concepts. Most recently, Mark let me know he's been taking a huge focus on AI and sustainability, and that intersection is looking to make a really big difference in the way that we move towards a more sustainable future. Mark, thank you so much for joining us today on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Jackson. It's my first podcast, so I'm very excited to do this, and looking forward to the experience and talking about anything you'd like to talk about today.
Oh, fantastic! Well, real looking forward to getting started. I usually always start this off in a pretty similar way, but is how did you get here? How did you get involved with AI, and what's really been your path to getting involved with this technology?
I always loved math and statistics, I guess, growing up, and I have a math and economics degree from the University of Alberta, and then I took a finance degree, which was really an extension of all the work in math. And back then, which was early 90s, we were working on all kinds of interesting algorithms, but we never really described it as data science. And my first job was working for TELUS in the pension and investments department, really doing quantitative work. And we never had that data science elevation that we do today, but I was fascinated by people who were working on algorithms. We had a fellow, Malcolm Jones, working in the fixed income or bond department and building the first neural network that I saw with using Delphi back then. And he was trying to get it to run fast on PCs and not having that computing horsepower. And so it was interesting to see that early work. And in fact, I've got a number of friends, that are in their early 50s today that look back and say, we were doing some of the most interesting things. We just didn't have the computing horsepower that's available off the shelf from companies like, Microsoft and others today. And a lot of that's being enabled. So that's really what led me there. And, I've spent the last 20 years in oil and gas mining and utilities, and the last 6 years at Microsoft. And I see Microsoft as a digital Disneyland. And that's really what has enabled so many companies to do so many interesting things. And I'm particularly interested in energy and sustainability, as we approach this new world. And we've got events like COP26 upcoming. And so we're looking at the world of energy transition, but also how to make this a greener, cleaner planet. And it's these tools and abilities that are allowing us to do that. So that's exciting for me.
Cool. I really appreciate you sharing that background. And it's so cool to hear, how far things have come and maybe the capabilities that we have now to finally execute on some of the ideas from earlier on. To get right into it, I was wondering if we could jump into talking about, how AI can actually have an impact on the industry. And I'd like to focus that on, going beyond operational efficiency. So for example, I'm certain that a lot of people could imagine, okay, we pull together all this data, say in oil refining, industrial manufacturing, we could definitely try and make those processes more efficient by identifying bottlenecks, other areas we can improve. But do you also see ways that AI can support a more fundamental transformation in the way that our society manages energy?
I do. And, to your point, if you look at the last 10 years, AI, machine learning, we focused a lot of these tools on improving processes that are in place today and making them, a little bit better. And now that shouldn't be understated. When I think of, the customers that I've worked with, and, you mentioned oil refineries, for example, and you'll take a process like crude blending. How do you take all these different types of crude oil and how do you make products more efficiently, like gasoline, jet fuel, kerosene, etc.? You can take an existing process, and if you improve that by 5 or 6%, you're typically talking about hundreds of millions of dollars, but you're also people making investments in that area where they haven't before. I look at our friends at Breakthrough Energy Ventures. As Bill Gates, as a founder of Microsoft, has now really jumped out there with Breakthrough Energy, and he's saying, what are the game-changing things that are going to create the new energy sources, or also going to have a huge impact on the world's carbon footprint or clean water or ecosystems, things that we haven't even thought of before because we haven't had the ability to do those before. Autonomy interests me in a big way, and our oil sands customers, for example, of doing autonomous trucks, but they haven't really been truly autonomous. They're not anywhere near level 5 or really even level 4 autonomy. So I think of what are the fundamental industrial use cases? What should machines be doing that people are doing today where they probably shouldn't be doing it? So really, in an industrial environment is fundamentally unsafe for humans in many ways. That's why we focus on safety and safety practices first. But you're going to see large scale, autonomous mines, for example, and you're starting to see a few of those around the world. But most of the customers we're talking with are thinking about how in the next 8 to 10 to 12 years, how do we take something that currently has maybe 10,000 people and do that with machines? And they're not actually thinking about, eliminating employees. They want to actually have those employees doing higher value work. How do they manage and monitor that centrally, but have machines interact with each other in a more autonomous way? And publicly, people are always talking about Tesla working on autonomous vehicles on the roads, but I actually think the industrial scenarios are much more controlled and therefore much more attainable and achievable. And so, that's just one example. At Microsoft, we've got some really interesting programs. We have Project Bonsai that really allows you to create sort of this closed loop autonomous process. And I see lots of industrial use cases for that, where people are turning knobs and dials today, but machines are going to be doing that and, sort of self-balancing. And Project Bonsai is an interesting one. We also have Project AirSim, which we originally created to help train drones. And so we needed to be able to create these digital environments, like a city, for example, and say, I need to train a drone to fly through that. Well, you don't want to train that drone in the real world and have it crashing into buildings. You want to be doing that in a digital environment. So AirSim allows you to create that digital environment, but have the actual physics inside it. So when that drone is crashing into a tree and where it's not. So when that algorithm is deployed on a real drone in the real world, you don't have all those problems. And so I see that investment. Microsoft ourselves is really not a robotics giant, but we are an algorithm giant, and we're creating these digital environments that are going to enable for more autonomy. And that's where I see AI and going. So what are things we could never do before that we can do now? Not just that 10 or 12% improvement on a process. And those are super exciting.
Yeah, super, super exciting. I really appreciate you going in depth on that one. Um, One of the things that, you mentioned a lot of different opportunities that Microsoft's working on. It's fantastic. I'm also wondering if you see signs of collaboration, say either between Microsoft or between other organizations in the space that, that might otherwise be competitors. Like, where are people really coming together on this one?
Yeah, and the environment and sustainability is one of my favorite topics. And we've been sharing data, knowledge, et cetera, from our data center teams, with Google, with Amazon, with others. Because if you think about the major challenges there, we're all big users of water, for example. But we don't need to hold that information as a competitive advantage. Let's make all of our data center providers around the world better at using water. Let's make all of us better at using energy. We've gone from using 1% of the world's electricity to almost 2% of the world's electricity between ourselves and our two major competitors. And, we can compete on other areas. Let's compete on how we serve the customer, or how we build new software products on top of this stuff. But let's share sustainability data, and so we're doing a lot of things in that area. We've got Microsoft's got the planetary computing platform, and we're sharing all kinds of interesting things across water, waste, agriculture, the Earth itself, satellite data. We should be sharing there. And I think that's one of the most exciting things in sustainability as well. And we're at the same time, we're creating products that create visibility on certain things. And one is, your computing footprint. So we released something called the Microsoft Emissions Impact Dashboard, for example. So if you're a company, how do you know your data center's impact on the environment? So that's what this tool allows you to do. You can see that immediately. And you're going to see that across all, industrial environments. What does your impact look like? And I think that's where there's opportunities to share, where companies are traditionally competitors. Where can they share that's not necessarily, so competitive in the oil and gas or energy industry? Really, it's the geology and geography that companies truly compete on. They don't compete on safety. So why should you hold that data to yourself? You should share that across the industry. We've seen some fundamental changes in the energy industry, not just in Canada but worldwide. We've been working on something called OSDU, or the Operational Subsurface Data Universe, and that's one of the key areas. If you look at underground, why don't we share better? So it's not just us, but other software companies. Schlumberger would be a good example. Typically you bought their software, which would be, Delphi would be a good example, and it would come with data sets, and companies would keep their proprietary data sets and not share that with their neighbors because they saw it as so competitive. Well, now there's a new framework and new standards that allow you to easily share data, and the expectation is that you will share data. And the expectation is when customers buy software from us, they expect us to do more sharing than we ever have. A lot of people don't know that Microsoft is the largest contributor to open source software in the world today. And, that wasn't always our history. Absolutely. When Windows was invented and created, as we went through the 70s, 80s, and 90s, that really wasn't our mantra. It wasn't about sharing it. We compete on our platforms, but we're certainly sharing software like we never have before. And now this next wave of sharing fundamental data for specific reasons, sustainability being a great one right now, is really that next wave. I encourage any listeners to check out our planetary computer and look at all the data sets that are out there. It's just stunning. Look at them, look at the satellite imagery, and look at the challenges that we face, and how can open data solve that. A key one that I think about is emissions around the world. Like never before have you been able to see methane emissions on the globe, or carbon emissions on the globe, but you can actually go there and see that. And companies like GHG Sat out of Montreal would be a good example. They're looking at the Permian Basin, and they're alerting these energy customers to say, hey, something's happening here, you should take a look at it. And they're also alerting environmental groups. The nice thing is we're having these open conversations about real data where we haven't had it before, and that's good, and it's also alarming for others. I was looking at the map the other day and looking at how much methane is coming out of Kazakhstan, for example, and who would have known? I guess they're obviously a major producer of energy, but now we really know, and we can have a different kind of conversation because of that openness, right?
That's so exciting, Mark. I agree that the kind of the level of visibility, the transparency, the access to data now is on another level than even that it was several years ago. So really cool to hear some of the advancements there. I wonder if you could tell us about a specific project that's gotten quite a bit of attention. It's the AI for Earth project. Able to share more about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I love AI for Earth, and I was one of the early advocates at Microsoft, and really showing that to our customers and partners. And AI for Earth, it's first of all, it's focused on climate, water, agriculture, and biodiversity. But it's really bringing the best of our AI technology to a lot of these areas that need focus. So if you think about bringing small companies together with leading researchers at university and the ability to grant them some dollars, when you bring that together with our best AI software and data, magic can happen. I saw a small company, Sylvia Terra, which is now called NCX. They had a mission to map North America's forests, and they want to use satellite data to say, where is growth happening and where are serious issues in forestry happening. And so, they made this available to a lot of others. And then, on one side, there was the, forestry companies, and they want that data. Obviously, they want to see how they're impacting forests, but environmental groups also want to see, what's the impact on forests. And that's an area where a company like Microsoft, yes, we can help incubate with some dollars, which always helps. But when we also say, hey, take our best AI technology and we're going to make that available to you, as well as access to things like satellite imagery. I mean, when you put those together and you give people with a ton of intelligence from our universities access to that, new magic can happen. I love that stuff. I'm a volunteer mentor with something called IM which is Innovative Masterminds at the University of Alberta. And, they're helping incubate small companies to do interesting things. And it's AI for Earth and programs like that are, giving rocket fuel to great ideas. And, and I really love that. So to date, we've awarded over 700 grants to projects with impact in over 80 countries. And, we're committed to growing this community of grantees. And what I found is when people find out about things like AI for Earth and the AI for Earth grants, they really can't believe that we're even doing stuff like that. You're talking about you're giving money to people and you're giving them the leading edge technology, and the the parameters are really around, are you going to do something fantastic in sustainability? And a lot of people have wanted to do things for years and they've missed those key ingredients. And I think AI for Earth is really giving them some of that. So I'm really proud of Microsoft and the people at AI for Earth within Microsoft that are doing that.
That's so wonderful. Well, for any AI researchers or entrepreneurs listening in, I really hope that they take the chance to apply for some of those grants. We'll definitely make sure that we link that out when we post the podcast. Mark, just wondering if there's such a cool ecosystem, it seems like, around a lot of what you're talking about, and I'm wondering if there's any other partners that you'd want to mention, anyone else in sustainability, maybe in particular anyone's based here in Canada.
For sure. And there's a great set of partners on our sustainability site globally. For example, one of the global partners that we work with is Ecolabs, that is just focused on water and helping companies reduce their water usage. And so Ecolab is incredibly interesting. But in Canada specifically, I found our relationship with Enercan super interesting. We've helped a customer that was looking for naturally occurring hydrogen. And Enercan is incredible at their data analysis, and they're using Azure and Azure AI tools. And I found that, the collaboration between government and our commercial customers super exciting. And so, I think Enercan's really interesting, and they're working on 3 pilot programs currently that support their department's sustainable development. And they're the electric vehicle and alternative fuel infrastructure deployment initiative, the Energy Star Detective, and sustainable mining national database. And so Enercan's been a great partner with Microsoft. Evergreen Canada is another one, a national not-for-profit organization. They're piloting a new data visualization tool with the city of Calgary. And I think all cities across Canada could use this, right? How do you evaluate your infrastructure that you have? How do you plan and mitigate the impacts of climate risks as a city? So Evergreen Canada is an interesting one to look with and to look at. I'm also working a lot with the utilities across Canada, and OPG is Ontario Power Generation is an innovator in that respect. They've been using a lot of data analytics to do day ahead forecasting, where people have done that before. They can get incredibly valuable information on that. And a lot of utilities I find are trying to figure out with this new EV wave that's happening, how can their networks handle EV adoption like they've never had to handle it before. You probably know BC is now the fastest province or state in North America in terms of EV adoption. That's happening incredibly quickly. And a lot of our utilities don't feel ready for that. It's only through data and AI are they going to be able to plan better. What neighborhoods are going to move to EV faster? Where should we put EV charging? What's going to need to happen in the homes, and what is all of this going to cost? So there's a whole wave of that I see here across our utilities, as well as really interesting leading edge research in areas where they haven't spent time before. Small scale nuclear is an example, and back to the work that Breakthrough Energy Ventures is doing with some of our nuclear partners, like TerraPower being an example of that. And yeah, I think you're going to see AI applied in new ways to say, how can we produce energy differently? How can we do that in a safe manner? And how can we do that in a completely green manner? And you just can't do that without, really modern tools. I love to see the startups in this area. Modern Electron out of Seattle is an interesting one I find. And they found a way to generate electricity in the home using a very, very small bit of natural gas and applying AI between the positive and negative plates for heat transfer. And they were able to create electricity on a super small scale, but enough to keep a home powered. And you're going to see inventions like that over the next 5 to 10 years. I really think the next set of unicorns are going to come out of sustainability. And it's really fun to just try and help empower them. And companies like Microsoft are really doing that with the fundamental pieces that we have in place, which is a lot of fun.
Wow, that's that is such a range of things. I'm so excited for you. I feel like that there's so much to talk about, so much to to build on. So that's just so wonderful, Mark. We're coming up on time here, and I just want to ask you for maybe one last send off note. But is there one thing that you would point to that you're more excited about than anything in AI technology right now?
Yeah, and it's not one particular algorithm or approach. When I hear most people talking about, just the latest advances in natural language or, in one approach, what excites me or gets me really going is the democratization of all of this. It used to be, as being one of those guys that were basically in the basement working on algorithms at one time, you needed to be so focused and so deep in all of these tools. But I think now you're taking it to the world. So anybody can grab an object detection algorithm and say, I want to identify when there's emissions coming off an oil well that maybe is down the road for me. That ability to grab those things in a packaged format and drop that into my application as a developer, that's going to change things, because we have to have this for everyone. It cannot be just a few highly intelligent people at a university in Montreal that can do this work. So the democratization of it. And at Microsoft, I think it surprised a lot of people, but we had a hackathon that was created probably 6 or 7 years ago that started with 500 people, and every year it's grown and grown and grown, and it's grown to over 50,000 people that get together every year and say, hey, well, what do we want to work on? Let's take these big challenges forward. And I see a huge amount of UI or AI use cases that are sort of incubated in this sort of hackathon format. And now we're including customers into that hackathon process. So that what excites me is the democratization of AI more than anything. I see people using it for good rather than for the other use cases that people are worried about in the world, like tracking humans and using it for purposes we don't want to see. I see this whole wave of improving the world. How do we find more energy that's green? How do we take care of people's mental health? How do we make the world a better place? So the democratization is really what I get excited about.
Well, Mark, thank you so much for sharing everything that you have today. I really am grateful to you and hope that all of our listeners are able to take away more than a few things from all that you've mentioned, the different programs you mentioned, different projects and initiatives, partners. So definitely encourage folks to continue to follow Mark's journey, Microsoft's journey, and beyond, and continue to check out efforts in AI and sustainability. Mark, thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to have the conversation. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. And to all of our guests, please stay tuned for the next episode of the Ask AI podcast. As always, we encourage you to submit any questions or comments or news. I'd also always like to thank our series sponsors, including Microsoft Canada. They're the hosts of the free AI Business School, where you can learn how to drive business impact by creating an effective AI strategy, enabling an AI-ready culture, and innovating responsibly. And also to Cinchi, the global leader in data-aware platform technology that makes data integration obsolete, restores data control, and accelerates hundreds of transformation projects. Last, we're also sponsored by ScriptSwap, the AI-powered jargon buster that simplifies business contracts with simple language, formatting recommendations. And of course, please don't forget, if you're a team working in Canada and want to share an update with the Ask AI audience, visit our website at askai.org and click on Team Check-ins. We'll be happy to have a conversation with you. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much again to everyone, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Ask AI podcast. The sponsors of this episode were Microsoft Canada, producers of the free AI Business School, and Cinchi, the dataware platform that makes integration obsolete. The series producer was Chris McClellan. The series editor was James Fajardo. Original music was provided by Mike Letourneau. To learn how to be featured on our podcast and get information about sponsorship and volunteering opportunities, please visit our website at askai.org, send us an email to info@askai.org, or talk to our bot by visiting askai.org/chatbot.